Hey y'all,
What's going on, guys?
I'm Jay,
And I'm Chris, the bird nerd.
and we are
The
the
bird
Bird
brains.
Brains. So I think I told you when I went back through all these, so the way this software works, so just for everybody listening, Chris and I are not in the same place.
Yeah,
We're not even in the same time zone.
across the
And
country.
so when we're talking, where our conversation is synced up, it can be like a half second either way off of when it actually records. So like there are a bunch of ones where we were like, oh, we just nailed that. And then we're way off. And then one of the ones
Awful.
where we were like, that's the worst one we did. It was perfectly synced up. So turns out we'll never know. We'll have no idea if that was good or not.
Maybe we just want it to be bad, and then that's just our motto. We say it terribly. We want it to be a little cheesy, anyways, right? Something catchy, and we are official now, right? We've got the
Yeah.
Bird Brains logo. We've got the coffee mugs. You know, uh, Mine's filled with water because I need to go to bed.
So is mine actually.
But
I
but
need to get tea. I feel like
there
podcasters
you
have
go.
tea.
Right? It'd be nice and soothing. But anyways, you guys go check out the merch and get some Bird Brains podcast
Yeah.
merchandise there going for you.
Everything that we get out of this podcast is just going right back into the birds and the content to keep making it for y'all. And we are, like we just talked about, we're not podcast experts, but we are kind of bird experts.
Yeah, yeah, we'll take you on
And
that one.
so, we'll try to help you out and, try to help us out. Today, for helping people out, we're going to talk to them about keeping and breeding zebra finches.
Dun dun
So,
dun.
off the bat, it's got to be the number one finch, right? It's got to
Oh
be.
yeah, hands down, most popular. I would probably put some money on you could go to any local pet store, and even if they're not even into birds, they'll have a zebra finch,
Yeah,
probably, that you could choose from.
and I think one of the easy ways you can tell, like if you go look at most seed bags, there are a few companies that don't do this, but most of them on their finch food, there are often other finches. There's usually a Gouldian on there too because they're pretty, but there's going to be a zebra finch on the bag. Even at my grocery store sells zebra finch food. It's
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
and they use them as lab rats. So I mean, there's a reason for that. They're very easy to breed and they're very easy to sex visually in
Yep.
most of the mutations.
Yep.
And that makes it a lot easier on, I think the two big ones are societies and zebras. Well, the big difference between those two from a breeding perspective, there's some other big differences, but the first one is zebra finches you can visually sex, which means I can look at the bird and very quickly and easily tell that's a boy, that's a girl. And that for breeding, I don't want to get
Yeah.
too in detail here, but you need one of each.
Well, and
Um,
and and the zebra finches have been bred so much in captivity, right, for centuries. um, they're hardy, right? They're docile to an extent, but they're really calm birds. If I get a new zebra finch, they don't know me. They'll fly away when I go into the aviary. But now, they're waiting for me at the egg food dish, saying, "Hey, you should have been here 30 minutes ago when the sun first came up because I'm hungry." Um, so they can tame down. I wouldn't say finger tame unless you hand raise them, but they're pretty calm, docile birds. They do great in house settings, because they don't freak out, when you got kids running around, things like that. So in that aspect, they're a good bird, and probably one of the reasons why they are so popular is because they do
yeah,
breed so easily and have been in captivity for so long.
Yeah, and I'll give my friend Bird Talk. She's also the Parakeet Detective Agency in New York City. Um, she actually has some of my birds, some of my zebras from last year, and she's breeding successfully this year for the first time. So first of all, awesome job. And
Nice.
second of all, she's like she does like online. She actually does some podcast production and some other like online stuff. And so in her office is also where her bird cages are. So she just like is working on her computer and she lets them free fly in that room. And her zebras will like come sit on. She sends me pictures of like they'll come sit on her hand or like try to take her hair for nesting material. or like sit on top of her
Yeah.
computer screen and like peck on it. So they're very inquisitive. I think the favorite way I've ever heard them described is like they're kind of like a bird bulldog, like they're very pugnacious.
Yeah.
So they have like a kind of a big personality. Like they don't know that they're a tiny little finch.
Yeah, they're like the Chihuahuas, but I would say that not as much bite, but they definitely have a lot of bark. But you reminded me of a story. So, my dad had a big aviary, and we had, I think back then, now that I think of it, we had way too many zebra finches, but it's just because they bred so
You know, say that
quickly. I mean,
that's a
I mean,
tale as old as time.
yeah, but um, you know, I probably spent the most time out there because I loved and I enjoyed the birds. But I got to a point where I would walk out there and yeah, they would fly down on my head. I'd go out there with a piece of bread or some lettuce and they would eat from my hands, and just instantly they were flying down. And it got to the point where I had to be strategic on when I opened up the door to go in, or else they would just fly out because they're wanting to come and fly down on me. So they're pretty fun birds. I think of like, you go to like your zoos and they have like the parakeets or the lorikeets and you hold your hand out and they come down and fly on you. Like I had the zebra finches eaten out of my hand as an 8-year-old kid. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, you just reminded me of that with your story with bird talk.
That's funny, yeah, and especially when they're just fledged for the first like couple months, which this is kind of true of all species, but especially zebras. They just have no fear of humans. I have a
Mm-hmm.
great picture back in the day of my youngest brother. So this is when I was in high school, so he's maybe in like seventh, sixth, seventh grade. So what does that make you like 12? And he's got his arm out, and there's like 10 zebra fledglings on his arm, and he looks like the lady from Home Alone with the pigeons. And my first bird, his name was Tarzan, was a chestnut flanked white male zebra finch. They're great. And I did want to say we talked about before, and then we got to talking about other stuff. Um, as far as keeping and breeding, we'll start with that. For sexing zebra finches, I've seen a lot of like confusion, misconception there. So two big giveaways. Almost all the color mutations, the male will have orange cheeks. There's a few where he doesn't, but on all the color mutations, the males, when they're in breeding condition, or really when they're just kind of adults, they will have like a darker red beak. And it's not like a dark red, but it's definitely like a reddish orange, like a burnt
Yeah.
orange dark, and the
Mm-hmm.
female's beaks stay true orange color.
Yeah.
So if you have two birds and one has that lighter orange and one has the dark red beak, that's a
Yeah.
male and a female.
And I
Um,
would say your only two exceptions to that, Jay, is your black cheek zebra finches.
yeah,
Your females will have the black cheek, but one thing that separates the two, so they'll both have black cheeks, but only your males will have the flanks on the side. They'll be black flanks because they're a black cheek, and they'll have the darker beak. And then your all pied zebra finches, so they have an all white mutation, but it's basically a zebra finch that's fully pied, and that will cancel out any other colors. So you'll have males and females that are pure white, no other markings. And sometimes those ones can get a little trickier, but usually it's the beak that you look at, and the males have a darker beak color. Those are the only two exceptions that I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, you're right. Majority, your males have the orange cheek or a cheek patch and the flanks and a darker beak, and your females are plain, right? No cheek patch, no flanks on their sides, and a lighter beak.
yeah, and I, so when I was younger, when I had just a cockatiel, I also had pet mice, and so we got two, and then all of a sudden we had 40. My mom always says if you have two, you might as well have 100, because you're going to get there. And I would say this with zebra finches: if you are breeding zebra finches, if you create an environment where zebra finches can breed, which is probably the easiest bird to do that with, you're going to very quickly get to a lot of zebra finches, like happened with y'all when you were a kid. And so I
Yeah.
would refer people back to what do I do with baby birds podcast episode, which I can't remember. I'm going to say it's either three or five.
I think it's
Um,
three. I think it's episode
yeah.
three.
So I'll refer you
Yeah.
back to that episode because if you're going to breed zebra finches, you're going to need that episode. Uh,
Well, and Jay, maybe that takes us into our first one with, what's the joys of breeding a zebra finch in an aviary setting versus a cage setting, some of the successes and tricks to the trade in both of those for a zebra finch and, successes that you've had in doing that.
yeah, I've definitely done it both ways. Doing it colony style in the aviary now, just two pairs. I'd say for wild type zebra finches, which means kind of the classic orange cheek, the bars, the flanks, gray, mostly overall bird. With the color mutations, and we've talked about this before, with different color mutations, you get different behaviors also. And I find
Yeah.
that the closer to wild type that you are, the more pugnacious, the a little bit more pushy, a little bit more aggressive they are. So if you have wild type birds, I think individual pair breeding is the best. Um, and in that case, it's pretty simple. I've bred them without any additional things besides basically seed and water. Now they need ample seed and water. Millet is another good thing, and then they probably need the right photo period, right? So the right amount of light. As long as you can meet those requirements, I think if you could meet those requirements in a shoebox, you could breed zebra finches.
Yeah. So this winter so I've got about 7 pairs of orange-breasted zebra finches. So it's just a mutation. So they're still the gray body, but they've got
They're
a lot
really
more
pretty.
orange. Yeah, really pretty. And I kind of let them do the aviary style. I just put the pairs in there together, put a whole bunch of nest boxes throughout, and just let them go. And man, they exploded. I need to go finalize my count because I still have babies coming out on these last couple pairs. But I've probably had between the 7 pairs about 50 zebra babies just this winter come out. I mean, they're just like
They're
every
prolific.
week I'm seeing new babies on the ground. And like I just sold to a breeder 15 like 2 weeks ago, and I still have a whole bunch in there. So definitely have a plan for where those babies go, like you mentioned before, Jay. But yeah, also be careful. I mean, they'll breed in any scenario you give them, just like the one I gave mine in a colony setting. And they can get pushy. They can, push other pairs around, but I have a big enough area to where even those less dominant pairs, I would say, get pushed away from the nest boxes. They go and find another nest box, and they were successful as well. And so, yeah, they're great breeders. But if you don't want to breed them, I just had a brand new person just 2 days ago come and buy some zebra babies from me. This is their first finch they've ever had, and I sold two females to her because I wanted her to get used to the birds first before they just start cranking out these babies for her in 6 months, and she doesn't know what to do with them. And so I said, get used to those two. Come back in a few months if you want to breed them, and I'll help you out, right? But because the zebra finches, you give them a nest box or even not a nest box, and they're kicking out
Yeah,
eggs
the
for you.
food bowl.
Yeah,
Um,
uh-huh.
yeah, and they do well. They do well with they're I'd say they're one of probably the best birds as far as like a pair of males or a trio of males or a pair of females, trio of females. They'll do well. Again, cage size is a big part of this. They are prone to plucking, so they'll pluck each other, and especially a thing I always say, if you're going to breed zebra finches in your nesting material, include feathers. So
Yeah,
there's two ways to do it. If you have a lot of zebra finches, you're also going to have a lot of like kind of cast off feathers. So when you're cleaning the aviary or your cage every week, save those little feathers, just put them in a Ziploc bag, and then offer those back as one of your forms of nesting material. Or you can do what I do. I actually need to order some now. I order craft feathers for like arts and crafts
yeah,
projects off Amazon.
yep,
They're not expensive. You get a bunch. They're usually turkey feathers. And then
yeah,
I cut them in half so that they're kind of smaller. They're maybe 2 inches by 2 inches. Because otherwise, when zebra finches build a nest, and they're great nest builders, they're really fun to watch, but they like to line that sort of, they'll put something hard at the bottom, then softer, and then usually that last layer, they like to line with feathers. So if they
yep,
don't have feathers and their buddies over there, with his feathers on him, guess where they're going to get some feathers from? Or they'll take
Yeah,
them from, had them take them from pretty much every other species in my aviary. So if you're going to
yeah.
breed zebra finches, make sure they've got a supply of feathers for the nest.
And I usually, if they have babies in the nest, if those babies are fully feathered, that's when I'm introducing more nesting material because that's about when they start plucking their babies, is right upon the days that they're going to fledge. But if you add that additional nesting material, because once those chicks fledge, zebra finches always love to touch up their nests and build upon them. So they're always in like build mode, it seems like. So the more nesting material you always have available, that should encourage less plucking of either their chicks or other birds.
Yeah, that's probably. I mean, I have a great video on my Instagram from like last year, so sometime in 2023, if you want to scroll back and find it. But it's like this huge cube of nesting material that the zebras started in this nest box, and the first clutch they had like a 2 or 3 inch nest, and by the end, the babies are basically like in the top like 2 inches because the dad just kept going, and it weighed like 3 times what he weighed. It was pretty impressive. It's like, how are you able to, like, how do you have the energy to just build like that? But
Yeah,
they do, and it's really fun to watch. Though it's cool. You'll see them land, sort through a couple different pieces, pick the one they like, move it back and forth in their beak. It's amazing how much dexterity they have, and then you know they'll just do that over and over and over for hours until they've got a good nest built.
yeah. Master builders, that's what I call
Yeah, they are, and they have a really cool song. I always say, to me, it kind of sounds like Woody the Woodpecker.
them. There you go.
And there's a wide variation, and the song is passed down. It's not hereditary. The urge to sing is hereditary, but the actual song they learn from their father or other male zebra finches in their environment. So it's kind of cool because the son will sound like the father. So if you had like a line and you kept it going, the song it'll change a little bit every time, but it's roughly the same song down the line. And
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
And I've had society finches foster zebra finches before, and the males, they take on that society finch song or
Yeah.
similarities to the society finch song. So, yeah, that's interesting and pretty cool. And it's like the males sing, and then the females, they just have like this little like honk chirp. It just sounds
Yeah.
like a little mini like yeah. And the males make that noise too, but they also come with the song that they sing, which is pretty funny. And they all stretch their necks out and kind of hop around. It's kind of cool to. They're fun to watch. They're energetic, right? They're
They do
usually
not
always
sit around
exploring.
ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're always exploring the nest. They're very social birds, so always have at least
Mhm.
two, whether it's of the same gender or a pair, and they're always preening each other or chasing each other around. Sometimes in a bad way or a good way, but super energetic. Uh, they're really hardy birds. They do great in the Utah environment because it can get really cold here, and they can withstand some pretty cold temperatures. I mean, growing up as a kid, we would just put a thin layer of plastic around the aviary in the wintertime. Like I would come out and the water dishes are frozen solid. The zebras are just hanging out there, It's like
Waiting for
they're
it to
just,
thaw. Yeah.
yeah, like, hey, you can give me some fresh water? I can't drink anything, and and they did really good throughout the winters. My brother right now, he breeds birds. He had zebras that he didn't know built a nest in his outdoor aviary in one of his plants. They fledged babies in the middle of winter.
In
He's like, I
Utah,
don't. He's like, I don't
which
know
is
how they
below
survived.
freezing.
Yeah, he's like, I mean, he's like, it was snowing on the plant. Like, he's like, I don't even know how. He's like, but yeah, they fledged 3 chicks this winter. So they're hardy birds, both withstanding cold temperatures and diseases.
I was
They're
gonna
pretty
say
hardy against diseases.
I've had them that got sick, and I thought, oh, this bird's gonna die for sure. And they're sick for a week or two, and then they're good again.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're tough. They are just tough little birds. And yeah, I mean, I kind of think of them as like almost like not a ping pong ball. Maybe that would work too, but like a pinball. Like they're just kind of always binging around the
yeah,
cage.
yeah.
They really don't sit still except
They're
at
like
night.
that annoying sibling that just never leaves you alone. and they're just constantly poking their head in your business. What, and it's like the other birds are always like, dude, why are you here? Stop talking to me. Like, go to the other branch, And they're
Yeah.
just like wanting to play
Hey,
and
hey,
socialize,
hey.
It's like,
Yeah, I think and I think they get a bad rap for being aggressive because and a lot of people put them in kind of that middle category. Like a lot of websites and stuff you'll see they'll differentiate. They'll have like the always good for a community, which like societies are the classic one that pretty much they're always good. And then you
hmm
have kind of that mid-range bird, which is usually like your zebras, your shaft tails. Then you have like the never community bird, which is like a weaver, right? We talked about
yeah.
that in another podcast episode. But I don't think as long as they have room, I really think they're usually okay. Now, again, your wild type, maybe not, but like any of your lighter colored mutations, I don't have problems with them. I think a lot of people, because they're cheap, because they're really, prevalent everywhere, people get like tiny little cages, have six zebra finches in there, and then say, oh, they're mean, they don't get along, they pick on one. Well, again, back to that sibling analogy, you might get along if you had a bunch of siblings, you'd get along great if you all lived in, different houses. You
Right.
imagine living in one room
uh,
with your whole family all right
yeah.
on top of each other, like you would have some bickering. So I
It's
think
always
they
like the
kind of get a bad
analogy,
rap.
like when we would, I've got a big family. I've got 9 siblings total, including me and my parents. We go on a vacation, and usually our vacations were 5 to 7 days. By that sixth and seventh day on our way home, we're all yelling at each other and fighting because we've been riding in the same car for 7 days, and it's like, get me home so I can get away from them all. But then we still love it and we do the same thing the next year, But it's like, yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah, if you pack anybody, I mean, just like humans, right? Anybody, if you pack any animal or anybody in that tight, there's gonna be some beef. There just has to be. And so I would say a lot of people that, well, I don't understand. Well, think about it a little bit more. And we've talked about appropriate caging, and I think either episode one or two. Um, but that's just another thing to consider. Just because they're cheap, and this happens to budgies too. Just
Yeah,
because they're cheap doesn't mean they don't need the right requirements for that species. Yeah, they're small in physical size. They're also a bird. They're used to being able to fly around. They're very high energy. They want to be able to move around a lot. So you got to provide them, the rule still applies. Like I've said it a million times, at least 1 square yard or 1 square meter per pair. So if you
right,
have four zebra finches, that you need a pretty decent sized cage for that. And if you're thinking, well, that's too expensive, I don't want to do that. It's like either don't get that many, right?
yeah,
Just as cool to have two, or build it. We both have videos on it. We build them, and it doesn't need to be some huge big outdoor aviary like we have.
right,
Build one in your house.
yeah.
If you have a long bookshelf, block off one
Uh-huh.
of your bookshelves and have a big long,
So
bird
in
cage in
my
it.
old house, in Utah, most of our houses we have a basement which is below ground. So they dig the big hole out. We have a lower level, we have a middle level, and then some houses have like a third level. And we have windows in the basement, but then those windows are basically underground, and you have a big window well, right, that
Yeah, I
separates it
remember
so
from your
you
videos.
can
These are so
climb out of the
cool.
window. Yeah, and so in my old house, I had 6 foot deep window wells that you don't use. The only thing you can use it for is if your house is burning down and you need a window to escape out of. That's really what it was. And so I turned it into a little cage, and I bred parakeets in there. I bred zebra finches. I had back then some parrot finches that I put in there too. And it was awesome. I mean, it was cool. And now you're just like, and I didn't have to do much. I just put the wire over the top and then some branches and nest boxes in there. And then I took the screen out of my window. So I just opened my window, give them the food and water, sit down, sit on my couch and watch TV right next to them as they're flying around. Like, it was really cool. And people loved it. They'd come down in my basement and be like, what the heck is this? And they see these birds in my window well. It was really cool. So something like that gave them enough space. And I really didn't have to build a whole lot of anything but put branches in there and a
Right.
top, so it was pretty cool.
I actually think I remember that may have been the before we knew each other. That may I remember seeing that in an old video of yours and being like, "Man, that guy's cool. That's a cool idea." That may have been what made me subscribe to your channel back in the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, and
That
look
was
at us now. We're
I
inseparable.
know. Yeah, that's so funny. Now we text every day. Um
Yeah.
but no, that yeah, that kind of stuff is such that's like zebra finches in a nutshell for me. It
Hmm.
doesn't need to be, they don't require egg food, live food, all this extra stuff. Now, I do egg food mine. It just helps you get bigger clutches, makes it easier on the birds. They don't wear out, etc. But I've bred, shoot, if it's not 1,000, it's more than 1,000 zebra finches, and 800 plus of those. It was just seed, millet, water, and you're humming.
Yeah.
And that's why, people might be sitting here listening at this point thinking like, I need more tips. You really don't. I think my biggest tip is what we've already said, right? It's just have the right environment, make sure you have a pair. Zebra finches they will do the rest. And I mean, I use them. Have you ever used them as fosters?
Yeah. One time I did it intentionally, and this was actually when I was a kid in my dad's aviary. I had some society finches, and for some reason I couldn't get them in the. It's probably because they were with the zebra finches. I couldn't get them to hatch and raise out their babies. So I took their eggs, put them under my zebra finches. They both had laid clutches at the exact same time, and I did get them to foster the society finches. So that was the only time I intentionally did. But this last year, I had zebra finches that raised a Gouldian finch, and I also had zebra finches that raised several shaft tail babies. And shaft tail babies, they're similar. They're Australian finches.
Mm.
They got similar mouth markings and begging habits, things like that. So I think that didn't surprise me. But the Gouldian finch, I mean, their chicks, they look completely different. They've got blue nodules
The
on their
nodules,
mouths. Their
yeah.
their begging habits are different. They make different noises. So I was really surprised that they fostered the Gouldian finch, and that was all in my mixed aviary, so that wasn't planned. Just the Gouldian finches and the shaft tails either
Dropped an
laid
egg
the
in there.
nest, yeah, yeah, dropped an egg in there, or the zebra finches took over the nest and laid their eggs on top and hatched them all out. So yeah, so a few fosters. How about you, man? Have you gotten any
I was
fosters
gonna
out of
not
your zebras?
nice of your birds, of your zebras, not to be like, that's not
No.
mine. They're just like, yeah, you too. Come on down. Yeah, I have. Um, so some of the mutations, like I know the orange, I guess orange chest, orange breast
The orange
zebras.
breast, yeah.
Sometimes they have a harder time with young. Again, when you change coloration, you change other stuff too. So I've
Yep.
used other color variations for them. And then I've also I've done shaft tails. I've done a lot of cross zebra stuff over the years. I think that's about it, but I wouldn't hesitate. I think they're they're not as good as societies, but I think they
Yeah.
will pretty much feed any bird. But that kind of leads us into the next thing. The other thing they will do is they will try to mate with other birds. They are definitely down for extra copulation. They are probably the species that is results in more hybrids than any other species. I know they've definitely caused me hybrid issues.
Yeah.
So that is something to consider about them.
Yeah, their drive to breed is well, I look at it at like 5 levels above most of your other birds. I mean, they're just that's what they think, right? They eat, sleep, poop, breeding. It's like
Yeah, maybe not
and
even in that. They might even put breeding above some of those
right.
other
Yeah,
ones. Yeah.
really. And so you get siblings that will breed together, parents breeding with their siblings. So it's important when you have babies to separate them, or they will interbreed. Yeah, I've never gotten any hybrids, but my brother has unintentionally through a mixed aviary. You've got what they call zowls, zebra
Mm.
finches and owl finches. Zebra finches and masked finches have done it before. Zebra finches and shaft tails.
I've done
Um,
zebra finches and shaft tails. That's the
yeah,
one
so
they got me.
yeah, so they'll definitely mix. the I would say you're if you have a mixed aviary and you have multiple zebra finches in there with you, the tendency for them to hybridize are lower, but it's still possible, and it still can happen. I've never had it happen, and I've had a mixed aviary for many years as a kid and now, but that doesn't mean it won't happen in the future, So
Right. And I've even had, I mean, intentionally, I've doubled females up on a male. So like back in
yeah,
high school, I had two females and one male, and yeah, they both, the females are pushing out clutches at the exact same rate. There's only one male in there, so it's like and he has one that he's clearly paired with, right? But he's going to see his girlfriend on the
yeah,
weekends for sure. So they are prolific, which is great, but two
yeah.
sides to every coin there.
Yep, definitely have a plan for them. That's probably my biggest,
Hmm.
you know, caution, I guess, because you will get babies if you have a male or female zebra finch. It's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when, right? And so just make sure you have a plan. And if you don't want babies, then don't get a pair. Get two females or two males. They'll be just as happy together, and they'll act like a pair, but you won't get babies, right? So just be smart about it, and then
Right.
if you want to dive into it, do your research and make sure you have a place that you can send them once those babies come out, because they're either gonna interbreed or you're gonna run out of space really quickly with zebra finches.
And if you want them to stop, pull their nest box. Like that's another big misconception I see everywhere. I want to put
Yeah,
finches don't need a nest box if they're not
yeah,
breeding. They really don't. Some do make roosting nests in the wild. True, they don't need it. And
yeah,
so, zebra finches will breed themselves to death. They will breed until the hen
yep,
is out of calcium and dies. So
yep,
definitely want to give them pauses. And, sometimes they'll do things like lay eggs in their food dish and things like that. If you don't give them an Xbox, it's okay. Just throw that egg away. That's
right.
okay. Like I want to tell people, I get asked that once a month at least. What do I do? I feel so bad. Just
Yeah,
I throw them
it,
in
it
I put them in the toilet and I flush them. It's fine.
it's not going to wreck their day, right? They're not going to
Right.
dwell on it being like I lost my. I think many times we put human emotions into there, and for the birds, they don't have those same emotions. They may go back to that nest, but within 24 hours, when they realize that there's no eggs left in there, it's an afterthought, right? They're thinking of the next time they can breed, or they're hungry
And I
again,
mean, and
right?
that's what
And
would
so,
happen. We've talked about this before, but the chick survival rate in the wild is like 5% or something like that. Like the majority, not even I'm not even saying more than the majority by a lot of finch nests in the wild, something goes wrong. A snake gets the eggs, or the wind
yeah,
blows the nest over, whatever. So for them, if they find that there's no eggs on Tuesday, oh well, you're right. They're thinking about I'm going to lay more eggs on Wednesday.
right,
They're a great bird. They have a lot of personality. They're really fun to watch. They're easy to breed compared to a lot of species. So that's usually why. I mean, I think they're typically my go-to first bird recommendation. It's either them or
yeah,
societies, right? I'm sure it's the
yeah.
same for you.
Yeah, and there's so many different colors that you can choose from now, right? Go online and type in posters of zebra finches, and it'll give you a poster of all the different color mutations. And a lot of them are available in the US and throughout the world. So the options that you have are pretty big as far as different types of zebra finches and different mutations of zebra finches. So that's really fun. And you can mix and mingle the colors if you want. They're not they don't have a preference to a certain color, things like that. And so, yeah, lots of options out there available to it. Do some research, Google, see what kind of zebra finch you would like, and yeah, I would definitely say that's my number one beginner bird recommendation. I would even say above a society finch. Society finch would be a close two. So
Yeah, that's what that society finches are a little bit pickier about breeding and some other things. But if you're wanting to, I want to do finches. I want to figure it out. That's like in my mind, everybody who has like, if you can have like a beta fish or a Siamese fighting fish like at your house, or like some goldfish in a thing, like the next logical like pet step up for me is like I want everybody in the world to have just like a pair of zebra finches.
Yeah.
You don't need to have the big aviary like I have, but just a little pair of zebra finches.
Yeah.
Be good.
And you'll find yourself staring at the cage, watching the birds, thinking, "Man, these birds are so goofy," but they're fun. They keep you entertained. They're nice background noise. Still just as messy as any other bird to clean up with, but
Hmm.
I would definitely recommend them in a house setting, in an outdoor aviary setting, in a cage setting. I mean, that they are a durable bird that will be very happy with most environments that you provide them. I always say bigger is better, right? Provide as big as you can,
Mhm.
but they're going to be happy in a nice room together with them. And you're at work all day, right? They're going to be just as happy with each other
They
in their
don't
cage and
care.
in
Yeah.
their environment. Yeah, they don't care. So good beginner birds.
Yeah. All right. That is zebra finches. Well,
Hey, yeah.
don't forget, everybody get down here in the comments. We need uh, people to like it. We need people to share it, and we need suggestions. What do you want us to talk about? Right? This is a podcast. We work for you. Tell us what you want to hear about. Ask us a question. Send us a suggestion. We've got a list. We're putting topics on there. We're filling it out. If we don't get to it right away, that doesn't mean we're not going to get to it. We want to get to it. Go check out our merch. Go check out Chris. He is Bird Nerd on YouTube and on what are you on? What else? I know you're on. Obviously, you're on
You,
YouTube. You're on
YouTube,
Instagram. You're
Facebook,
Bird Nerd 4.
yeah, yeah, Bird Nerd Ford on there, and then for you, you're the that underscore Javiary for your Instagram, right? And then
Mhm.
the Javiary for your YouTube. And what are you doing? Reddit now? But is that the
Facebook,
same?
Reddit,
Facebook? What it
Threads.
Threads? That's the one I was thinking. I was gonna say edit. I
Threads
don't know
is
why, but
terrible. Threads is tough, but I'm on there.
yeah, go check them out.
And then yeah, Reddit. Oof. Yeah,
I don't
there's
know. I don't know. I don't dare venture into that world yet. I barely have enough time to keep everything else afloat. That might be when once I'm retired.
I did it by
You know.
accident and now here I am. Now I'm helping people having daily conversations. So I'm just why not? So
Yeah. But yeah, go
all
check us
right.
out.
All right, y'all. Thanks for following along. We'll catch you in the next one.
See you
Cheers.
guys.